All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming here today. And I tell you what, I'm so excited to have Joost with us here today. Joost is a very good friend of mine for quite a long time. Most recently, he's become my boss. So I'm, I'm super excited to be here with Joost. Joost is the head of section for the physiotherapy program at Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, where I'm also a professor. And Joost is also an executive board member of the Environmental Physiotherapy Association, which I hope we'll get into a little bit to talk about later. Joost is right now in the Netherlands, but lives in Bergen, Norway. And so, Joost, thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with us today.
Thank you, Mike. It's really wonderful to be part of the program here and support you. So I love to have a talk with you. It's friends forever, so it's always good
All
to
right,
sit here
all right. Thank
and to
you.
share thoughts.
Well, we have, as you know, we have three common questions that we're sort of asking of people from around the world. And so I'd love to have you think about this and then react to it. So the first question, as you know, is in your perspective, and by that, I don't mean Bergen, Norway, or even Europe, but as global and as wide as sweeping as you want to go. But from your perspective, what are the opportunities and threats for physiotherapy over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's an interesting question. When I look at physiotherapy for future, from a kind of futuring perspective, I think that physiotherapy has to go back or forward more toward life. So if physio, as Philip Merrick from an Environmental Physiotherapy Association once provided it, is physio, where does the word physio come from? And probably the word is from a Latin direction, comes from physios, and it's connected to life. So if it's therapy for life, so what kind of life are we supporting? In that sense, I think that one of the opportunities for physiotherapy is to expand beyond the skin of the human body and to go above, away from not only humanoids, but have to go for all living creatures or life in itself. Because I see also from a humanistic perspective, you can say that we are not living in just into within our skin. We are in an environment, so we have to protect also the environment and also the other sources around us. That means also when we expand it, that we can see from, don't we have an opportunity to go more towards life or find the boundaries? Where can we support things? So I think for me, that's one of the big opportunities that we have. That we take again, the physiotherapy, we talked about the individual, the task, and the environment. But both as a clinician and as an educator, I sometimes I miss the environment, and I think that's a big opportunity. So it's kind of is it something of a small frustration? No, I think it's more the opportunity that I think something that we can grab because we understand so much how people or how the world is in motion. It's an emergent action. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that we have. That means also that we have to connect with the world. That's also the opportunity that we have right now as physiotherapists, not to see as ourselves, and not to look upon the world of health and healthcare. And I really want to stress that it's more than healthcare, that we look upon the world in health. But if that's the case, then we don't have to look at it from a physiotherapeutic perspective. We look at it from a health perspective. So, what is the added value of physiotherapy towards health, to promote health? I think there's a big opportunity. And at the same time, maybe also when you ask about the threat, and I think that one of the biggest threats that we have at the current rate, can we move out of our own bubble? Because when I see it physiotherapy from a physiotherapy perspective, we see the different groups thinking, ways of thinking, and we see the difference. When I zoom out of physiotherapy, I see a very consistent story of ways of working, ways of thinking and practicing of physiotherapists who contextualize in different areas, different fields, and that kind of thing. But it's an overarching point. The more we keep on stressing into the detail, we are losing our profession because we are losing also the world outside of physiotherapy. The more we are clear that we have a common ways of thinking and practicing into the world, which is of added value and connected with different perspectives and different professions and also non-professions, but at least we have a value in society. And I think that's our biggest opportunity because new ways of thinking are occurring. For one way, of course, in the climate crisis, that we have an opportunity there. We see the climate is changing. That means also the life of people are changing. The climate will affect people's health.
Mm.
And unfortunately, here it will affect some people way more than others. So there's also a health equity system around here. And I think we are in a really good position to at least support, help people to participate into life on a different way than it is now. But then we have to move away from the laboratory. Not only it's not that we don't want to work in a laboratory, but also into the field with other professionals, see what's there, uh, protective, and we do it, but we can do it better and we can do it more with others.
Mm. Those are some really excellent points. Part of the model that I'm suggesting, again, in my candidate statement is, well, the first part is visioning the future of physiotherapy. And, you and I have both spent a lot of time with Dave Nichols, who really has done a magnificent job of pushing us, like bringing us to that precipice of, well, what is us and who are we? And how did we get here almost? And so the point you bring up about the environment is critical, I think. I mean, if we just think about refugees or people with refugee experiences, war is not the only push or stimulus of movement or migration. So can you just like maybe tell me a little bit more of the Environmental Physiotherapy Association? I mean, I understand that it's not right now a subgroup or part of World Physio per se, but nevertheless, like we need to be thinking about all of these, whether a person agrees or disagrees. It doesn't matter. I mean, the point is the discussion and what effect is that going to have on the people, the communities in which we engage with. So can you go on just a little bit more on that Environmental Physiotherapy Association?
Yes, of course. Well, I think that the moment that the Environmental Physiotherapy Association started with an idea of Philip Merrick, and he starts to wonder about what is physiotherapy, where are we actually talking about? So he starts to dive deeper in what is the purpose of the meaning of physiotherapy. That was a connection with Dave Nichols. So both came from a critical physiotherapy perspective,
Mhm.
and they got a kind of a critical stance to what's here, and also from a planetary perspective, that's where Philip starts the movement. Don't we have to do something with physiotherapy?
Mhm.
And of course, we can take whole healthcare, but from our own profession, can't we take a stand here? And that was actually the first stand to start with it. And then Philip invited me, and also he had been talking with Dave and the other people to see around the world how can we change the perspective on physiotherapy and also take the environment with us.
Mhm.
And it's actually from different we take it from different angles. So the environment, the social environment, the physical environment, the livelihood, the connection between species. Is there a hierarchy? Because there's a lot of things that we have in our life that we can say there's a hierarchy. But what if we have a singularity? Everything is equal. So we are humans are equal with the water. And of course, you can agree or disagree with this kind of philosophical position. But the moment you start wondering about, you go deeper and you get more
Yeah,
entangled. What is it really what we mean?
sure.
And and that was the idea with the environmental physiotherapy.
I
It's the
see.
same as the Critical Physiotherapy Association, I think. And then your question is it connected to World Physiotherapy? No, in a way, it's not formal. Environmental Physiotherapy Association is a free organization for everybody who feels the need and the willingness to participate to join. and to support. The only thing is we have a kind of a statement, which is in the Environmental Physiotherapy Agenda 2023, that no physiotherapy will be graduated without understanding planetary health and the environment within their way of thinking, reasoning, and working.
Yeah, that's
And
brilliant. But
yeah,
but as you're talking, Houston, let's get to that second question soon, but it's fascinating what you're talking about, because in global health, we've for a number of years talked about One Health, because the interaction between, say, animals and humans has always been part of the global health agenda, and all became clearly at the forefront in recent years during the pandemic, right? But that wasn't the first time. There were previous times. Think SARS, in 2000, 2004, and then other periods when humans and animals need to live closely together, things happen differently. And so planetary became a next step of that. Like, how do we look at the entire globe? So I'll be honest, I don't understand all of it, but I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I love the objective you have, that every graduate moving forward will understand the impact of environmental change on their practice and the people they serve. So I
yeah,
think it's absolutely brilliant. Hopefully we can have more conversation with Philip and you and the whole group. I will certainly, should I be elected, certainly commit to fully pushing forward all of the subgroups. I think the subgroups are really where action is happening in the practice, in the profession, the day to day, with people who actually treat patients. I'm sort of becoming a little bit far away from that, although not so much. I still practice in global health whenever I'm responding to emergencies, but nonetheless, I think you're onto something absolutely important here.
yeah. And I think it's in this addition, it's nice what you say. And I think it's so important that we see more and more. We have to push the agendas. And what we saw now, for example, in environmental, and it's the same as we work with refugees problems and with health equity, or actually inequities. It's not to be more climate friendly, just being for climate friendly. We have to see for the bigger picture. So what is the purpose of our actions on the livelihood of others? But now we're going in this direction. Going back what you said on the different subgroups, I think that subgroups have a very important aspect to bring on the conversation. And here's the nice thing: it's not about finding consensus. I think that we have to embrace dissensus,
No.
because in that dissensus, then we understand what's the different positions. But it's just different positions. From that different positions, we can move forward and create direction.
Mhm.
But it's the direction that you need to have a kind of a direction, a feeling, where to go, what kind of compass are we working on?
Yeah,
And here is a moral, ethical compass would be quite helpful. And I think that
I think so.
fits so much in physiotherapy. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Let's go to our second question here, which was, I'll just sort of read it out, although just because it makes it more specific. But what was the most important event in your professional life that led you to leadership position today?
I think that yeah, I think this time that I was a practicing physiotherapist in a small private practice in the Netherlands. In that time, just have had there was in 2005 the war around, no, 2000, yeah, 2004, 2005 war in Chechnya. We had a lot of asylum seekers, a lot of refugees there, so to start to come to the practice. And at the same time, first there were options to treat them, and then dropping below, and they felt in a kind of a gap. And then I started wondering, what is actually the purpose of physiotherapy here? Because am I just producing every half an hour, or do we have a purpose in helping? If it's really helping people to participate, how does it work? And I started asking more and more questions about it for myself. And then I felt the moment I was in practice was important, but I was kind of on a just sometimes on a hamster wheel.
Mm, mm,
Uh, and I think I have to find other ways. In that case, I started to keep on practicing and also joined into university, start working there, both clinical and sports medical center and as a teacher, and to dive more into the world. What does it mean to be physiotherapist from different perspectives? Several years later, I got stuck. No, I got uh, hit by a car. I was cycling. I was together with my son. He was studying physiotherapy at that moment. We were cycling back from school to home, and I was hit by a car who was texting, and he didn't see me. So I ended up on the hood, and my son was unfortunately out of the way. He cycled out of the way, and I remember I didn't want to have anything happening with me. So I thought, no, nothing happened. So I will step away. And well, everybody was agreeing. And at that time, I thought I didn't have any kind of symptoms, and actually didn't want to have any kind of symptoms. But it got quite quickly, it went worse. So I mean, headaches, concentration problems, problems with speech, and this thing that you don't want to see. And at the same time, also feeling that I was the one constantly being I have to push that I couldn't participate.
mm,
So I felt my privilege of just being in the world was taken away. I didn't have the energy, and I have to commit kind of things. And I was thinking, this is what a lot of people constantly feel like, that the moment that you can't follow the normal route, then you have to show whatever you constantly have to do. And that kind of hit me. So I have to say I had a confusion. So that was quite clear. So I had to slow back. And I started more and more into philosophy. That was mostly Camus, the French philosopher, and building up more a sense of strangeness when you go from with a lens of strangeness towards your profession.
mm.
What is it actually that we look? And with strangeness, I mean, what if you don't understand what the world is about, and then you look upon it? How does it look? How does the profession look like? What does physiotherapy look like? And then I think, okay, I have here some questions, because the moment that you feel there's something I have agency. That means also I have to change it, and also for privilege for the world, for people who have not in the normal and are the outside. Where can you help? And the reason the road for me was in education, because in educational structures you can build up more agency, more moral
Mm.
more moral ownership, that you have your own compass again from whether you're doing not just following the rules.
Yeah,
It's like Bista once thought, it's a Parks Eichmann paradox. Where are we standing? Are we conforming? Are we rebellious?
yeah,
We have to understand where the rebelliousness is so important, and not by just being asking for a revolution, because that just 360 degrees back to where you came from. No, the revolution or the rebelliousness is by being critical, being in communication with each other, moving to the next step. That was for me
yeah.
that bit in practice, and afterwards the conclusion really changed my life, and also I think I have to take
Right.
action and I have to be agency.
Well, thanks for sharing. That's it's a very personal story. I appreciate it. But what you're also saying is also well, two things I'm taking away. One is um, in terms of events in our lives, the patients teach us probably more than anyone else who's ever taught us the practice of physiotherapy or anything. It's those unique moments that we have privilege with a patient, their family, and their communities. And then you speak of your own experience. So that's those are very powerful examples. Let's go to our last question here. In this, a little bit more levity probably, but what advice would you give yourself as a new grad if you could go back in time?
I think that's a nice question, and you ask it. And for me, the interesting part is that, in a way, I've been actually involved in this question, as having my oldest son is since 2 years a graduate physiotherapist and practicing as a
Yeah.
physiotherapist. So I have had this kind of conversation. My other son is now in his second year of education to become a physiotherapist. So I have close quarters working together with them.
Mm.
What advice would you give? And I think my biggest advice is to get work in freedom and be critical. Be critical for everything that you hear, and critical and freedom, not from a negative sense, critical by just giving critique, but it is constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's the freedom from a positive sense, as Eric Fromm once said, the freedom to create. It's not the freedom to take away all the boundaries. We don't have that much boundaries, but it's the freedom to create and be creative, look upon the world, ask the questions, and start collaborating with people. People want to go on.
Mm.
And that's for me also, when I go back to myself, I think I had to be trust even more on that one than you did before.
Mm.
Create, trust on it, and create that positive freedom to create with each other. Go further. I
That's
think
amazing.
that was the most important one.
Well, and you have a very particular situation with your children actually going through the process, so you can almost relive the past in some ways.
It's
Uh,
so, and we did it, and we kind of were close into education. As my older son, we were in the same program,
right?
although of course I was out of it. I was not into his assessment, and I was not having him giving him a privileged position. I think it's more that I was his pain in his ass. But at the same time, the moment you start collaborating with critiquing each other, so the biggest value that you can give to each other is critique, is feedback,
Yeah.
is go further, challenge and support. Because in the challenge is also the support. And the way that you do that one to each other, then you get it also back. And then, oh, you create. It's the same as we have a conversation. We don't have to agree. But the moment we are in respect and we want to build it on, we understand the different positions and then try to get more empathic towards that position. That makes really helpful.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's sort of that need to critique or be critical of decisions, ideas, in order to move us forward. Now, from a global perspective, I think a lot of member organizations and PTs around the world would love nothing more than to have those critical conversations, those meaningful debates. And oftentimes in the past, anyway, what's limited them is geography or possibly language, two of which are no longer barriers in 2023. So, Joost, let me just thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure, and we'll be seeing you soon in Dubai with Philip, I understand. So maybe we can
Yes.
come back around on the Environmental Physiotherapy Association. But really appreciate your time and your openness here today.
Thank you, Mike. It was lovely to have a talk with you here.
Awesome. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.